I always believed secrets had a sound. A low hum in the back of your head, like a warning you chose to ignore. Mine followed me everywhere, even in the quiet of my room, even in the moments when I told myself I was just being dramatic. I lived in my father's house, under his rules, under his expectations, under the steady gaze of a man who thought he knew exactly who I was becoming. And for the most part, I let him believe it. But there was another version of me that only came alive after midnight. That version waited for the soft buzz of my phone, the single vibration that felt louder than a shout in the stillness of the night. I'd sit on the edge of my bed, back pressed against the wall, eyes fixed on the door like it might betray me at any second. The messages were never wild or reckless. They were careful, almost innocent on the surface. Did you eat? Did you sleep? I keep thinking about what you said earlier. Words that shouldn't have meant anything, but somehow meant everything. I told myself it wasn't wrong. Not really. It was just talking, just understanding someone who understood me in a way no one else did. We had found each other in the small cracks of everyday life, in passing glances at family gatherings, in conversations that lingered a little too long. The kind of connection you don't plan for, but also don't stop. My father always said loyalty was the only thing that mattered in this world. Loyalty to family, to your name, to the people who raised you. I carried those words like a badge on my chest, repeating them in my head whenever guilt started to rise. But guilt has a way of growing teeth. It bites when you least expect it. Some nights, I'd stare at my reflection in the dark screen of my phone after the conversation ended. I barely recognized the person looking back at me. My eyes were tired, not from lack of sleep, but from carrying something too heavy to share. I wondered what my father would say if he knew where my thoughts went, who my heart leaned toward when no one was watching. During the day, I played my part well. I laughed at the dinner table, nodded at my father's advice, answered his questions about my future like I had everything figured out. I talked about work, about plans, about dreams that sounded safe and sensible. Meanwhile, my real dreams were whispered into a phone late at night, wrapped in careful words and half-finished sentences. There were moments when I almost told him. When I stood in the doorway of his room, hand raised, ready to knock. But every time, I heard his voice in my head, firm and steady, reminding me of the kind of person he expected me to be. So I walked away, again and again. The connection I tried to bury only grew stronger. It lived in the smallest details. The way a name lit up my screen. The way my heart sped up when I heard footsteps outside my door. The way I smiled without meaning to when I read a message that said, "I wish I could talk to you right now." I knew I was standing on the edge of something I couldn't come back from. I just didn't know how close I already was to falling. That night felt different from the start. The air was heavier, like the house itself was holding its breath. I sat on my bed, phone in my hand, rereading the last message I'd received. It wasn't dramatic. It didn't need to be. It simply said, "We can't keep pretending this isn't real." My chest tightened. I typed a response, erased it, typed again. I was searching for words that could fix something I wasn't even sure I wanted to fix. Then I heard it. Footsteps in the hallway. Slow, deliberate, getting closer. I froze, phone still glowing in my hand, my name lighting up the screen in a way that suddenly felt like a spotlight. The door handle moved, just slightly, and in that moment, I knew the sound of my secret had finally found its voice. The door didn't swing open right away. It hesitated, like whoever stood on the other side was deciding whether to step into something they couldn't step back from. I stared at the handle, my grip tightening around my phone until my fingers went numb. The screen dimmed, then went dark, but the damage was already done. The glow had given me away. My father stepped in quietly. Not angry, not loud, just quiet in a way that felt heavier than shouting ever could. His eyes moved around the room first, taking in the small, ordinary details. The unmade bed, the half-empty glass of water. Then they landed on me. And finally, on the phone in my hand. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence stretched so thin it felt like it might snap. "Who were you talking to?" he asked. His voice wasn't sharp. That almost made it worse. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. My thoughts tripped over each other, all the lies I'd practiced in my head suddenly forgetting how to line up. I shrugged instead, a weak, meaningless gesture that didn't fool either of us. He took a step closer. I instinctively tilted the phone away from him, and that single movement told him more than any words ever could. "Let me see," he said. I didn't want to. I couldn't. That screen held more than messages. It held every confession, every late-night promise, every line that crossed a boundary I pretended wasn't there. My thumb hovered over the power button, considering turning it off, hiding everything behind a black mirror of my own reflection. But he was already reaching for it. When his fingers closed around the phone, something inside me broke loose. My heart slammed against my ribs like it was trying to escape. He didn't scroll right away. He just looked at the last message on the lock screen. Those simple words stared back at him, clear and impossible to misunderstand. "We can't keep pretending this isn't real." He exhaled slowly, like he was trying to steady himself. Then he looked up at me, really looked at me, like he was seeing a stranger standing where his child had been. "Is this what you've been hiding?" he asked. I nodded. There was no point in denying it now. He sat down on the edge of my bed, the weight of him sinking into the mattress and into the space between us. I'd never seen him look so tired. Not after long days at work. Not after sleepless nights. This was a different kind of exhaustion, the kind that comes from realizing you don't know someone as well as you thought you did. "How long?" he asked. I told him, not the exact number of days, but the truth of it. "Long enough to matter. Long enough to hurt." He ran a hand over his face and stared at the floor. "You know what this means," he said quietly. I did. I'd known from the beginning. Every message had come with a shadow, every late-night call had been followed by a wave of guilt. I just kept choosing to ignore it. "It wasn't supposed to be like this," I said. "I didn't plan it." He let out a bitter laugh. "No one ever does." For a moment, I thought he might raise his voice. I almost wished he would. Anger would have been easier to handle than this calm, disappointed tone that felt like it was peeling me open. "This isn't just about you," he said. "This affects everyone. You don't get to pretend it's just a feeling you can carry around without consequences." I stared at my hands, at the way they trembled against my knees. I tried to stop, I admitted. I just couldn't. That was the truth, and it sounded weak even to my own ears. He stood up slowly, like every movement took effort. "You have to end it," he said. Not as a suggestion, as a fact. Tonight. The word echoed in my head. End it. Just like that. Like you could turn something off the way you turn off a light. I nodded, even though my chest felt like it was caving in. He paused at the door, his hand resting on the frame. "I raised you to be honest," he said. "Don't make me regret that." Then he left. The room felt colder after he was gone. The walls seemed to close in, the air thick and hard to breathe. I picked up my phone, my fingers shaking as I unlocked it. The conversation was still there. Every word, every moment I'd tried to protect now exposed in my own mind. Before I could type anything, another message appeared. "I know something's wrong," it read. "Please don't shut me out." I stared at the screen, torn between the person who raised me and the person who now held my heart in ways I didn't know how to undo. The house was silent. My father was somewhere down the hall, probably wondering where he went wrong. And I was sitting there, caught in the middle of a choice I knew would leave someone broken, no matter which way I turned. I told myself I would listen to him. I repeated his words in my head like a rule I couldn't break. End it. Tonight. The problem was, every time I unlocked my phone, my hands betrayed me. I didn't type a goodbye. I didn't even type a pause. I just stared at the screen, waiting for another message like it was a lifeline instead of the thing pulling me under. Morning came with a weight I hadn't felt before. My father didn't mention what happened. He passed me at the table, nodded once, and poured his coffee like nothing had changed. That silence was louder than the conversation we'd had the night before. It felt like a test I was already failing. I tried to keep my distance. I kept my phone face down. I avoided the places where I knew I might run into them. But the world isn't that kind. It has a way of forcing people into the same space when they're trying the hardest to stay apart. We crossed paths in the late afternoon, in a place that was too public for anything to be said out loud. Our eyes met for just a second, and in that second, I felt everything I was trying to bury claw its way back up. There was a question in their expression. A silent, desperate why. I looked away first. That night, the message came. I saw you today, it said. You didn't even look at me. Did I do something wrong? I closed my eyes and leaned my head back against the wall. I could still hear my father's voice, calm and steady, telling me this wasn't just about me. I could still feel the disappointment in the room, thick enough to touch. And yet, here I was, typing again. I'm just trying to figure things out, I wrote. The reply came almost instantly. Figure out what? If I matter to you. That one hit harder than I expected. I didn't have a clean answer. I didn't have a brave one either. I had a messy truth I kept rearranging in my head so it didn't look so selfish. I started sleeping less. When I did sleep, I dreamed of standing in a hallway with two doors, both half open, both leading somewhere I didn't want to go. Every morning, I woke up with that same tightness in my chest, like I was carrying a secret that had grown too big to hide. My father grew quieter. He didn't ask about my day anymore. He didn't offer advice I didn't ask for. He just watched me, the way you watch someone you're worried about but don't know how to reach. The messages changed. They stopped being soft and careful. They became heavier, more loaded. I can't keep doing this, one read. I need to know if you're in this with me or if I'm just something you turn to when you're lonely. I stared at that one for a long time. The truth was, I was in too deep to pretend it meant nothing. But I was also too scared to admit what it meant out loud. There was a gathering coming up. One of those events you can't skip without raising questions. I knew they would be there. I knew my father would be there too. The thought of all of us in the same space made my stomach twist. The night of it, I stood in front of the mirror and barely recognized myself again. I looked like someone who had made too many choices and was running out of room to pretend they were all temporary. When I arrived, the room was full of noise and movement. Laughter, music, voices overlapping. I felt like I was underwater, watching it all happen through a thick layer of glass. I spotted my father first, talking to someone, his posture relaxed in a way I hadn't seen in days. Then I saw them, standing on the other side of the room, eyes scanning like they were looking for something they already knew they'd find. Our eyes met. This time, neither of us looked away. The space between us felt charged, like the air before a storm. I took a step forward without thinking. Then I stopped. I felt my father's presence somewhere behind me, even without seeing him. It was like being pulled in two directions at once, my body wanting one thing, my conscience pulling me back. They mouthed my name. Just once. Silent. Personal. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I didn't need to look to know who it was from. I turned and walked outside, needing air, needing space, needing something that didn't feel like a choice I was about to regret for the rest of my life. I pulled the phone out and read the message. I can't do this in the shadows anymore. If you're going to choose, choose now. I leaned against the wall, the noise from inside muffled behind me. My hands were shaking. My father's face flashed in my mind. So did the look in their eyes when they saw me across the room. I realized then that trying to keep both was just another way of losing 'em both. The door behind me opened. I didn't turn around. I didn't need to. I could feel someone standing there, waiting for me to say something, to do something, to finally stop running. And in that moment, I knew whatever I did next would change everything. I didn't turn around right away. I stayed there with my back to the door, my phone still in my hand, the last message glowing like a question I couldn't avoid anymore. The silence behind me wasn't empty. It was waiting. My father spoke first. Not loud, not angry, just my name, the way he used to say it when I was younger and scared of the dark. That sound alone almost broke me. I finally faced him. He looked at me like he already knew the answer to everything he was about to ask. His eyes moved from my face to the phone in my hand, then back again. Is it still happening? He said. I didn't lie. I didn't dodge. I just nodded. The air between us felt heavier than any argument we'd ever had. He closed his eyes for a moment, like he was bracing himself against something painful. I asked you to end it, he said. I tried, I replied. And for the first time, I realized how weak that sounded out loud. He leaned back against the wall, folding his arms, not in anger but in defense. You know what this is doing to me? He asked. Watching you walk away from the person I thought you were. Those words hit harder than anything else he could have said. I'm not trying to hurt you, I said. I don't know how to shut this off. He studied my face, searching for something. Maybe a trace of the kid he raised. Maybe a sign that this was just a phase that would pass. Sometimes, he said slowly, being an adult means choosing the harder right over the easier wrong. Before I could respond, the door opened again. They stepped outside, drawn by the tension, by the absence, by the way I disappeared without a word. The moment their eyes landed on my father, they stopped short. The realization hit them at the same time it hit me. There was no more hiding. No more shadows. For a second, none of us spoke. I didn't mean for this to happen, they said finally, their voice low but steady. I never wanted to be the reason you two stood on opposite sides of a wall. Quote. My father looked at him, really looked at him, like he was trying to understand how someone else had stepped into a place he thought only he belonged. And yet, he said, here we are. I felt like I was standing in the middle of a bridge that was about to collapse from both ends. This isn't fair, I said. To either of you. They took a step closer to me. Not touching, just close enough for me to feel the pull I'd been fighting for weeks. Then stop making it something it doesn't have to be, they said. If you're going to walk away, do it. But don't pretend this didn't mean something. My father turned to me. Look at me, he said. I did. I can't control what you feel, he said. I never could. But I can tell you this. Some choices don't just change your future. They rewrite your past. You won't look back at this the same way once it's done. I felt tears burning behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. And if I walk away from this, I said, I'll always wonder what my life would have been if I didn't. They watched me, their expression a mix of hope and fear. My father watched me, his face lined with something that looked like heartbreak he was trying to hide behind strength. I realized then that I wasn't choosing between two people. I was choosing between two versions of myself. The one who stayed safe, who kept the world the way it was, who protected the bonds that had always been there. And the one who stepped into something uncertain, something that felt real and terrifying and completely my own. My phone buzzed again in my hand. I didn't need to check it. The moment itself was louder than any message. I need a minute, I said. Neither of them stopped me as I walked a few steps away. I stared out at the dark, at the scattered lights in the distance that looked like 1,000 tiny lives moving forward, making choices, living with them. I thought about my childhood, about my father teaching me how to ride a bike, how to stand up after falling, how to keep going even when my knees were bleeding. I thought about the first late-night conversation that made my heart feel seen in a way I didn't know was possible. I realized there was no version of this where I walked away untouched. I turned back. They both looked at me at the same time. I'm not running anymore, I said. My voice was steady, even if my hands weren't. But I'm not pretending this didn't matter either. My father took a slow breath. They held theirs. I don't know what this means yet, I continued. I don't know how this ends. But I know I can't keep living in the middle, lying to both of you and to myself. There was a long pause. The kind that feels like the world is holding still to listen. My father nodded once. Not in agreement. Not in approval. Just in acceptance. Then whatever you do next, he said, do it honestly. They took a small step back, giving me space instead of pulling me closer. That's all I ever wanted, they said. I looked at both of them, feeling the weight of the moment settle into my chest. I took a step forward. Which direction I went, I still don't talk about. Not even to myself. All I know is that night taught me something I never learned before. Some choices don't end a story. They leave it open, waiting for the next thing you're brave enough to do.